Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to this Sunday morning at HBC. Whether you're watching live, whether you're watching on demand, or whether you're watching the podcast, however you're enjoying this, then you're very welcome here with us. My name's Stu.
I'm Dazz. And I have my welcome to Stu's. We are continuing today our latest series called The Church Rebranded. And our senior minister, Martin, will be doing a message later on called Addressing the Drift. I guess thinking about how we've drifted from that sort of original brand that Jesus gave us. But before we get too bogged down in the details of that, let's watch a short film to kind of remind us of the big picture for this sermon series, The Church Rebranded.
From beloved to blamed, the church's image is in freefall. Can we rebrand without compromising our beliefs? Let's own our faults, shape our image, and share Jesus' life-transforming message. The Church Rebranded.
Be a great thing to take with us. So we were camping right near the beach, and one day it was perfect. The sea was calm, and I thought this is going to be great. So we went as a family down to the beach. We'd all bought ourselves wetsuits, and we all had all our equipment and everything, buoyancy aids. And I went out on this balance board. I got it pumped up, put it in the water, went around a bit on my knees, thought, yeah, that's okay. But I'd spent extra money to get a extra bit on it, which meant you could sit on it and use it a bit like a kayak. And I couldn't get it quite right. So I thought, well, if I get it in the water and I can sit on it and I can adjust this seat so I get it just right. So I got in the water, nice and calm, sat down. And I was just spending my time getting it just right. And I had my paddles like this. Thought, I'm right. I looked up, good. Turned round, and I drifted about a few hundred meters out from shore. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a bit further than I'd anticipated. Well, it was calm. There was a really strong wind, and I just acted like a sail, and I'd just been slowly taken out without me even noticing. So I thought, okay, let's just turn round, and I couldn't even turn the balance board round. The wind was so strong, I was stuck, still going out. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I had to jump in the water because I thought, I'm just acting as a sail. I'm just going to go further. I thought, I'm going to drag this board all the way back. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life. I could see my family having a lovely time on the beach in the distance, completely oblivious to the fact that I was about to die. But I managed to drag. I tried to drag it, and it flipped upside down with the wind, and it was all a nightmare. But I got there in the end. But it was really, really hard work. And the reality is, brands sometimes drift off message. They have an idea about who they are and what they stand for. But regardless of what they've got written on their signage, or written on their leaflets, or written on the mug on the office desk, regardless of what it says on there, that's not always what they are known for. That's not always their brand identity. Here are some examples. So IKEA, we know you're only there for the meatballs. Lidl, come for the veg, leave with an electronic tire compressor. Argos, you're not allowed to see it until you bought it. And Weatherspoons, because who wants to eat a microwave meal at home? See, what a company, a brand is known for, unfortunately, is often drifted from what it originally intended it to be. And the same has happened, unfortunately, for the church. Just because we say it and we believe it and we have it written on our websites and written on the walls doesn't mean that is what we are known for. See, Jesus said these words in John chapter 13, verses 34 to 35. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Of all the things that we can be, of all the things that we can do, Jesus said the key thing that's going to set you apart from everyone else, the key things that people are going to see and go, you must be a follower of Jesus, was the way that we love one another. But like me, fiddling with my seat on my balance board and being drifted off by the winds, we can be distracted by doing very good things and lose sight of the key thing that we're called to be, and that's to love. Love one another as Jesus has loved us. Gandhi, the Indian who you've probably all known of, says, "I like your Christ. I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ." We know that we've drifted far from what we were called to be when we no longer resemble Jesus, who we are called to be. And we might blame media portrayal and media bias. We might blame ministers or leaders that get up to naughty things. We might even blame other denominations and other churches. But when it comes down to it, when push comes to shove, the responsibility of correcting that drift, addressing it, bringing us back onto track, bringing us back to basics, to what Jesus called us to be. If you're a follower of Jesus, then it's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. We can blame other people, but when it comes to what we're called to do, it's us who are called to sort this out. Now, this morning, I'm going to talk about how us as individuals can start to address that drift. Next week, Helen's going to come and talk to us about what church might look like, us coming together, what that might look like to address that drift. But we're going to look at a passage from 2 Corinthians chapter 5. If you've got a Bible, do grab one. If not, it will appear on the screen. And there are 2 letters. The New Testament's full of letters that were written to the early Christians about how they were to live out that call to love one another as Jesus has loved us. And 2 Corinthians is the second letter that a guy called Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. And we're going to look at chapter 5 and verses 17 to 21. I'll just make a few comments as we go through that. You got the wrong translation. What is it in? NCV? I have no idea what that is. Well, put it up and we'll see what... As long as it's in English, I don't mind. Right, here we go. If anyone belongs to Christ, there is a new creation. The old things have gone and everything is made new. There's this idea that when you become a follower of Jesus, you become something new. This is what baptism is. We've got baptismal service coming up in a few weeks. If you're interested in baptism, do talk to me, because you could get baptized in a few weeks' time. And when people become a follower of Jesus, it's like they've died to their old way of living and being born into a new way of living. They're becoming a follower of Jesus, becoming a new creation, and becoming citizens of God's kingdom. All this is from God. Through Christ, God made peace between us and himself. And God gave us the work of telling everyone about the peace we can have with him. Verse 19. God was in Christ, making peace between the world and himself. In Christ, God did not hold the world guilty of its sins. He gave us this message of peace. In my version, it says the ministry of reconciliation. That through Jesus' death on the cross, he has mended the broken relationship that we have with our Creator, God. That Jesus demonstrates the love, the self-sacrificial love on the cross, so that we might be reconciled with God, not counting people's wrongdoings against them. But Paul says here, not only did God reconcile us to Christ, but we too are called to be reconcilers. We too are called to take on that mission that Jesus had and reconcile the world, bring back the world, restore that relationship. We have that same task if we are followers of Jesus. This is verse 20, which I'm going to read from here because it's missing out the key words that I wanted to bring out this morning. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God was making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. God made him who had no sin be sin for us, that's Jesus, so that in him, in Jesus, we might become the righteousness of God. So we are ambassadors. If you are a follower of Jesus, you are ambassadors. An ambassador is an official envoy representing a state in residence in a foreign country. We all know about ambassadors, and they tend to serve Ferrero Rocher and stuff like that. But we are called to be citizens of God's kingdom, living in this world, representatives, envoys of God's kingdom. We're there to share that message of love and hope. We are called to be brand ambassadors. We represent the Jesus bands. And the reality is, if people have a problem with the brand, usually it's not because of Jesus, it's because of us. See, there's a particular coffee shop, which I'm not going to name, in Hawley that I don't like to go to. We've got plenty of coffee shops, fortunately, so I've got plenty of alternatives. There's just one shop that I don't like to go for. There's nothing wrong with their coffee. There's nothing wrong with their cake. In fact, I might argue they've got the best cakes in town. But I just don't like some of the staff. I know. Well, if you do, don't say it. I just don't like the staff. There's just something that jars with me. And the reality is, if we are called to be Christ's ambassadors, we are called to be Jesus. You might be the only Jesus that some people meet. And if they don't like you, then they're not going to like Jesus. And that's where we have a problem. And that's where we need to address the drifts. See, if you are living openly as a Jesus follower, you are representing the Jesus brand. You are showing the world what Jesus is like and what the church and Christianity represents. You are a God advertisement, unfortunately, whether you like it or not. So do you realize that you are being watched? So I'm going to share with you something I thought, should I share this? Because I'm a bit embarrassed by it. And I'm going to share it anyway. Not last year, the summer before, because occasionally me and the kids, we will scoot to school and we go through the park. And on the way back after school, we stopped off at the skate ramp. And the kids had to go on their scooters. And it came to time like, no, we need to go now. And Joel decided that he didn't want to leave. And you know how infuriating your kids can be sometimes. And he wanted to be carried. I couldn't carry him because I was carrying the scooter. I was just like, come on. So I just left him there and I walked away thinking he's going to catch up in a minute. He didn't. He just stayed there going, ah. And I got a bit further and I got further and further away. And there was a bunch of teenage boys there. And one of them shouted at me and had a go at me for the way I was treating Joel. And I lost it. I was so furious that a teenage boy would tell me how to parent my child. And I gave him what for. And then I went back and got Joel and took him home very crossly because I was already wound up by Joel. That's caused me to lose my temper with this guy. And I felt very ashamed of it. But I thought, okay, just the way it is. Last Christmas, our carol service, lady turned up. I thought, I recognize you. And I was serving teas and coffees afterwards. And she said, do you remember me? I went, familiar. She says, I was at that part on the park bench when you had a go at that teenage boy. He looked like he was terrified that you were going to kill him. I was like, oh my goodness. I felt so ashamed of the way I acted. Are you aware that people are watching you? We all make mistakes. We all do silly things. And we want to be gracious about that. But the reality is, if you are consistently living a life that is counter to the message of Jesus, and yet you are claimed to be a follower of Jesus, then you are a bad advertisement. If you drive over the speed limit consistently and cut people up, please don't put a Jesus sticker on your car. Please. If you want to improve your driving, stick the sticker on there. I've got one on my car. I stick to 73, which I think is enough for in the 30. Yeah, thank you, Dad. Yes. Just keep the speed up all the time. It's fine. You see, the writers of the New Testament, I said it's chock full of letters, and a consistent thing in the letters is talking to that early church, those new followers of Jesus, about saying the way you represent your church is really important. The things you do, the things you say, and the way you say them are vital when it comes to building up this Jesus brand. Obviously, I didn't use the word brand. Here are just a few examples of what the writers of these letters shared. It says, you should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders. Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors, so that when they see your honorable behavior, they will honor God. Live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive. Do everything without complaining and arguing, so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. See, is your life shining brightly in an unfortunately often dark and murky world? See, how you act, what you say, the things you do, the way you treat people is hugely important. See, if your good works lead people to ask questions and praise and honor God, then what does your bad works do? See, we are basing this series on a book by Jeff Jones, which came out a few months ago, called Rebranding Christianity. That's why I got the title confused, because ours is Church Rebranded. That's Rebranding Christianity. He's an American pastor, and I think we can all tell if you look at the news and politics and stuff that the church's brand in the States is in free fall. They've got huge problems. You could argue that maybe we're a little bit further on in that respect. But he sums up the New Testament's teachings about how we should live into three basic core commands, and this is it: choose humility, be gracious, and avoid slander. And I just want to very quickly just talk about what each of those are, and maybe some of the things you can start to apply practically in your life starting today. So firstly, choose humility. This is what it says in Ephesians. This is a letter to the church in Ephesus. It says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. See, choosing humility is recognizing that you are fallible, that you make mistakes. It's about being open to instruction and conversation. Now, Christians have a huge problem with this. Not all Christians, but many Christians, because they think, well, we've got the truth. We have the Bible. We have the Word of God. Therefore, it's our task to go around and tell the truth. And yes, that's true. But the reality is we make mistakes. The church makes mistakes. Some things in this Word of God are really incredibly difficult to understand. So we need to approach every conversation with a humility. Now, what that means is that when you're having a conversation, even with someone that disagrees with you completely, or you disagree with them, you should listen long enough to answer the question, where are they right? Listen long enough to answer the question, where are they right? I've got a friend who I meet with regularly who, it'd be great to get him along to church. I can't even get him along to the curry night because he's so damaged by the church growing up. So damaged that he just doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And I could get defensive. I could try and argue the point, but sometimes we just need to listen and recognize where we have been at fault. Recognize that we make mistakes. That's humility. Second thing, be gracious. Colossians, letter to the church in Colossae, whatever. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. Gracious, show kindness and compassion. Recognize the innate dignity in all human beings that have been created in God's image. This word they translate as attractive. In the original Greek, it's seasoned with salt. Who here likes to put salt on their food? Yes, it tends to be over a certain age, I find. But we use salt because it makes the food more palatable. It makes it, I have salt on my chips. I do like salt on chips. Our conversation should be seasoned with salt. It's attractive, it's tasty. People want to have more of a conversation with us. So we might have the right response for whom? For some people? For the people that we agree with, the people we like? The people who are nice to us? No, it says for everyone. Can we have a conversation that's gracious and attractive with everyone? Even teenage boys that make you cross. Show patience, speak kindness, serve lovingly, be careful with your words and tone, in person and online. Our online world is full of harsh and mean-spirited content. Picking holes, knocking down. Instead, we're called to be kind, respectful, gentle, patient, humble, forgiving, compassionate. We're there to listen, to empathize, and to love. That's what being gracious is. And then lastly, number 3, avoid slander. Titus 3, verse 2. They must not slander anyone and must avoid quarreling. Instead, they should be gentle and show true humility to everyone. See, slander is defined as untruths said about someone else. But I would argue there's any words that we use that does damage to someone else, whether they're true or not. And for us, that might be gossip. It might be talking behind someone's back. It might be falling for and perpetuating half-truths, divisive comments, and inflammatory rhetoric. Often things we do online. It's about putting up straw men. Do you know what I mean by a straw man? When you kind of look at those people over there and you go, well, they believe in that. And you set up some sort of thing they stand for that you can easily knock down with your great persuasive skills. That's a straw man. Putting up a straw man you can easily knock down, twisting truth to put someone else in a bad light. Choose humility, be gracious, avoid slander. See, are you making these 3 core commands a priority in your life? I'm running out of time, so I'm going to draw to a close in a moment. But the early church did just that. They were in a far more precarious position than we are. Sometimes we think we're persecuted. We don't know what persecution is. These were followers of Jesus who were willing to die for what they believed in. They were a group of small minority that stood up against not only the Roman Empire, but also the religious people. On both sides of the argument, whether they were Jewish or whether they were Greek or Roman, they stuck out like a sore thumb. They were accused of being cannibals. Do you know why they were accused of being cannibals? Because they ate the flesh and drank the blood of Jesus. Now we know that's bread and wine, or in our case, fruit juice. But it was just another thing used against these followers of Jesus. And yet they changed the world. By the 4th century, the Roman Empire was a Christian empire. And they did that through love and through demonstrating that love in the things they said and the way that they acted, by being willing to lay down their lives. When plagues hit cities and everyone ran away, it was the Christians that stayed and looked after the sick. It was the Christians that started the first hospitals. There are letters from Roman emperors to their priests saying, can you please start doing what the Christians are doing, because we are losing this battle of hearts and minds with the people. The Christians won over the world because they lived like Jesus. We too can change the world. We too can turn this brand around if as individuals we start or continue to choose humility, be gracious, and avoid slander. Some questions are going to come up, and just give you time, just an opportunity just to reflect on what I've said, maybe what God said to you this morning, and how we move forward with this.
Am I careful and intentional with how I behave among outsiders in my everyday life? Do I consider every placement as an assignment from God to reach people around me whom He desperately loves? Are people being pulled closer to Jesus because of the way I live and relate to them? How would the outsiders in my life describe Christians based on what they see in me?
Whoa, it's good. I'm enjoying the series. Like, a
Yeah,
lot, I think,
definitely.
because especially in that sermon, I found it quite like personally challenging. I think it's easy to think about the church and the branding issue of the church, and think about like, oh, the church over there, like all the specific denominations in the church, and like Mark said, like blame them, like, oh, they've ruined the reputation for me and for us. And
Yeah,
whereas when you think about some of the questions you just asked there, I think, oh, okay, maybe this, oh, you know, it would be helpful to reflect on my personal, like, that's how it kind of, I think I'll walk away and think that today. Which questions do we want to pick? I think the last one was good.
Yeah,
we said.
Yeah.
So how would the outsiders in my life describe Christians based on what they see in me? What are you thinking about that one?
Well, I think there's a lot of personal reflection required. I think coming out of this series, because obviously it's not the church, it's us, it's the individual kind of like
we are the church. I mean,
yeah, totally. Yeah, we all absolutely have our part to play in how the church perceives Christianity. Because I always remember that quote. I forget who said it, but it's like, judge Christianity by Christ alone. Kind of but the world doesn't. They see what you and I do, the mistakes that we make, whatever it is, kind of as Martin alluded to, kind of, it could be, getting angry with someone, yelling at somebody, just because you're human, and kind of, people get angry, people get cross, kind of, or it could be just whatever in your life that kind of just isn't how it should be, that people pick up on and notice, and kind of your attitudes of about whatever it is, then it's life under the microscope, isn't it?
It is hard, and I think especially like I can't get away with people not knowing I'm a Christian. Like I think that's probably good and bad in some way. In that people, like, whenever people say, like, what do you do? I think, oh, I work for the church, and they either just instantly glaze over, and I can see people thinking sometimes, like, I don't know how to speak to you anymore.
You are no longer a human.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like that. But then I think, like, it's interesting, but I have the over opportunity to show people. Like, I think I don't know. Is how do the outsiders in my life describe Christians based on what they see me? I like to think that people that I meet, that I just meet for the first time, maybe walk away and think, like, oh, like, that's not the kind of person I would expect a pastor to be like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hope I don't swing too far the other way. That sometimes people say, like, oh, I would never guess you're a Christian. And I think, I'm not sure that's a compliment.
That's not a compliment. No, hang on.
But I think, I like to think people will meet me and think, like, oh, he seems all right, so maybe Jesus is all right, or he, if Jesus
he's all right, and there's something different.
But in a good way, not like in a weird way. No,
totally. I think it is. People do notice, and then when they know that you are a Christian, like, depending on what on their particular faith or lack of, then it kind of you do find people watch what you do, and it's kind of it's quite a bit of pressure.
Do you get that? Do people know you're a Christian at work? Like you don't have to.
Yeah, no,
is that how does that
they
work
do.
for you?
They do. I mean, it's my work situation is a bit weird because I work with people that are across the Atlantic, and so I don't actually tend to meet these people face to face. I have, but people do. Christian,
and how do they kind of what's the response from them? Do you think you're aware that they are therefore watching you as an individual?
I'm not conscious of that, but I think they take a professional kind of non-judgmental approach.
Keep the HR people happy.
Totally.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
But what about your friends and family and stuff like that? Are they all faith people?
Certainly, lots of other instances previously, I've become aware, or people have said to me, you're different, aren't you? And then because I always remember I was having a conversation with somebody and said, "You're a Christian, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." It's like I always thought there was something different about you, and I like it.
Yeah, that's good.
And it was that was really cool because it was like, well, okay, so there's something's working then.
Yeah. What do you think they meant when they said
because I think she'd seen me go out of my way to do stuff for some people.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of that I really didn't have to do, and I think she'd seen that. So it's people do notice, but at the same time they notice if you screw up. Yeah. Which is far more common. So.
I think people are looking now. We talked about that at the beginning, didn't we? The fact that sometimes people are wanting us to. Did we talk about that at the beginning? Yeah, wanting us to at least not succeed.
Yeah.
Or they will enjoy it when we don't succeed. Maybe. I think that's
because they're just Christians, and of course they're going to get it wrong. So, there is an element of that. So.
What other questions are there? Some other ones good. Are people? So the third question is: are people being pulled closer to Jesus because of the way I live and relate to them? And I think that's an interesting question because I think it's easy to think as a Christian I need to make sure I'm being a good person or a kind person or a charitable person. But I also think it's important, or this question makes me think again, actually I also need to make sure it's important that I'm being the ambassador of Christ, not of living well or being kind. Not only those things, it's also about, are people being pulled closer to Jesus, or are they thinking oh, Dazz is a nice guy and he makes the world a better place? And I think are people being pulled closer to Jesus? I hope they are, but I don't know. We're
probably the wrong people to actually ask. We need to ask other people.
Yeah.
Other people that we know.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I don't think it's not something I'm necessarily always intentionally doing. It's making sure that I'm representing Jesus. I'm trying to be. I might be being a bit harsh on myself, but I think I'm always conscious that. I don't know what I'm trying to think of an example of something that
you're just getting on living your life. You're being Dazz in the world, and
trying to make the world a nice place to live. And
you're just living out your faith every day.
Yeah, but I think what I could do more of is just dropping in the fact that I'm doing that because Jesus loves me loads, and and let people know why I do what I do. I think it's probably something that question makes me think I could probably make sure people are being pulled closer to Jesus rather than just noticing that's or whatever it is that I think is going on.
That's a fair point. Because I guess sometimes we just got to get out of the way and just let people look at Jesus rather than hey, that is a good guy. Kind of who's the guy behind me? Kind of.
Who drives what I do?
Totally. Where's the heart?
Maybe. I don't know. I'll probably sit and journal about that a bit at some point in my life.
Definitely. This. I think for everybody, there's a lot of self-reflection here that kind of needs to happen. I think it's good that this series is kind of it's prompting a lot of that.
I hope so. I hope it's scratching where people are itching. Do drop things in the comments. If I think that was quite a practical. It felt like quite a practical sermon.
Oh yeah, that's
I'll go away with loads of questions. If you've got questions, that was a good link, Dazz.
That was awesome.
Then you can email us at gotquestions@hollybaptist.org.uk. Someone will hopefully reply to those relatively quickly, and you can be part of things by doing that. What else can you do? If you want to know more about us here at Hawley Baptist Church, there's another email address for you. Join.in@Hawley Baptist if you want to get involved in what we do, or you want to be part of things like Martin mentioned about being baptized. If that's something you're interested in and you don't know us that well, you can email us there. Well, hopefully that message was really helpful, and you can share that with people. Here we are on YouTube. The wonders of social media means you can share that. We are going to do communion in a moment, though, and we're going to do that. So hopefully you've got your bread and juice. If not, quickly run and get that now. We are going to read from 1 Corinthians 11 as we do it. Do you want to read it? I'm going to give that to you.
Oh, all right, fine. I can read. Okay, so
I can do.
Yeah, as Daz said, this is 1 Corinthians 11, 23 to 26. So I passed on to you what I received from the Lord. On the night the Lord Jesus was handed over to his enemies, he took bread. When he had given thanks, he broke it. He said, "This is my body. It is given for you. Every time you eat it, do it in memory of me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup. He said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Every time you drink it, do it in memory of me." You eat the bread and drink the cup. When you do this, you're announcing the Lord's death until he comes again.